The signal arrived at 0300 Galactic Standard Time. No source. No encryption. Just a frequency so old that most consoles flagged it as deprecated. Chancellor Vakhtar's crest flared in irritation. Another ghost transmission from the rim? He hissed. Filter it. But the signal persisted, simple, unyielding. A human language packet, ancient but unmistakable. Across the marble floors of the Federation Council chamber, hundreds of delegates shifted uncomfortably. The translation came online. Transmission source, unknown. Message content. We are awake. The chamber fell into dead silence. Then the lights dimmed. Every hollow screen flickered with static before resolving into the image of a human face, pale, sharp-eyed, unblinking. Identification? Barked Admiral Kethla, feathers trembling. No known match, sir. But genetic markers, Terran. 99.8% certainty. Someone screamed. Humans. It couldn't be. They had vanished centuries ago, crushed, erased, burned from every archive after their rebellion. The face on screen smiled faintly. Galactic Council, she began, her voice calm as still water. You once voted for our enslavement. You were thorough, efficient, and merciless. Now we ask for your vote again, this time for your survival. Her name flashed beneath the image. Commander Aria Vale, HSS Nemesis. Vakhtar rose to his full height, reptilian eyes narrowing. This is impossible. Earth was scoured. Their fleets dismantled. Aria's tone sharpened. You destroyed our bodies. Not our will. You buried us in silence, and silence is where we learn patience. The chamber erupted in chaos, voices screaming, orders flying, communications jamming across the sector. Aria's image leaned forward. You will convene in 24 cycles to decide. Mercy or extinction. Choose carefully. Then the transmission ended. For the first time in 300 years, the galaxy remembered what fear felt like. The council chamber hadn't stopped shaking since the human broadcast. Every species representative shouted over the other. Feathers ruffled, mandibles clicked, scales trembled. But the words of Commander Aria Vale still hung in the air like a ghost. Mercy or extinction. Choose carefully. Chancellor Vakhtar slammed his claws against the central console. The echo silenced the noise. Enough! He roared. This is psychological warfare. A phantom transmission meant to stir panic. Humanity is extinct. But Admiral Kethla didn't share his confidence. She leaned forward, her avian eyes darting to the holographic remains of the transmission log. Chancellor, the signal came from inside the Orion Spur, where Earth once was. Energy signature matches old Terran drive technology, but refined. Faster. Denser. Another delegate hissed. Then it's true. Vakhtar's jaw tightened. He looked toward the window, the endless stars beyond the Council's halo station. Once, those stars had been the Federation's playground. Now, they suddenly felt like hiding places. Far away, aboard the HSS Nemesis, Commander Aria Vale watched the Council's reaction unfold in real time. The ship's AI, Erebus, projected the holographic feed across the darkened command deck. Dozens of alien faces shouted in disbelief. Erebus spoke with its usual monotone calm. Prediction: 74% probability of military response within 48 hours. Aria nodded slowly, fingers steepled beneath her chin. Let them mobilize. They need to believe they still have control. Fear works best when wrapped in the illusion of choice. The AI flickered. You intend to let them strike first? Yes, she said softly. Just like they did to us. Her gaze fell to the old Terran insignia etched into the console, a single blue Earth surrounded by 13 stars. A symbol once banned across the galaxy. She traced it with one finger. They thought erasing us from history would end our story. They never understood, silence isn't surrender. On the council station, panic had turned into planning. Dozens of fleets were ordered to move toward the Orion Spur. An armada of over 1,000 warships, drawn from every race that had once voted for human enslavement, was now converging toward the Sol system, most of them trembling but too proud to show it. "Deploy reconnaissance," Bakhtar ordered. "If these humans survived, I want proof. And if they lie," he bared his fangs, "I want their ashes." A junior officer interrupted. "Sir, there's something else. The archives, we found the vote records you ordered sealed 3 centuries ago." The Chancellor froze. The holographic archive opened before him, grainy footage of the vote of subjugation, when every species in the Federation had cast their decision. One by one, alien faces declared, yes, while the humans in chains knelt at the chamber floor. When it ended, silence filled the hall. Even Bakhtar felt the weight of it pressing on his chest. "Erase this," he said quietly. "Already tried, sir," the officer replied. "But someone restored it. Across every network. It's broadcasting now." "What?" Bakhtar snarled. "Who authorized?" He stopped. On every screen in the chamber, the emblem of the HSS Nemesis now glowed, pulsing like a heartbeat. Then Aria's voice returned. "History repeats only when lessons are forgotten. 3 centuries ago, you voted to enslave us. Today, we vote to remember." The chamber lights dimmed again. Back aboard Nemesis, Aria stood before the ship's forward viewport. Below her stretched the ghost of Earth, no longer the wounded, polluted world the aliens remembered, but reborn. Cities gleamed in orbital rings, defense grids shimmered, and shipyards crawled with life. Erebus updated calmly. "Planetary shield integrity at 98%. Colonies report readiness. Humanity awaits your word." Aria's reflection stared back from the glass, her eyes cold, focused. "Not yet. Let them come. They need to see what we've become before they learn what we can do." She turned to her officers, humans dressed in sleek graphite armor, silent, efficient, patient. "Deploy shadow drones," she ordered. "Monitor their fleet movements. No interference. Observation only." A young lieutenant hesitated. "Ma'am, what if they attack first?" Aria smiled faintly. "Then they'll finally understand why we call this ship Nemesis." Hours later, in deep space, a Federation scout ship picked up a strange anomaly, a distortion ripple in the dark. "Commander, we have movement!" the helmsman cried. A faint shimmer appeared ahead, nothing visible, just the sense of something wrong in the void. Then, for a fraction of a second, they saw it, a vast silhouette sliding out of the stars. "By the core," the officer whispered. "That's no moon. That's—" Their transmission cut off. At the same instant, hundreds of Federation ships across the sector received the same encrypted message. Automated response. Terran space entered without consent. You are trespassing. No weapons fired. No explosions followed. Just silence, followed by the slow, terrifying sound of systems shutting down one by one. Engines. Shields. Communications. Dead. Back in the council chamber, reports flooded in. "Entire fleets disabled," cried an aide. "No casualties, but power drained. They're floating blind." Bakhtar's scales rippled with rage. "How? What weapon does this?" Kethla whispered the only answer that fit. "Humanity." Bakhtar slammed his fist again, eyes wild. "They dare humiliate us? Send more ships! Twice as many!" But deep inside, fear had taken root. Because the humans hadn't killed anyone yet. They could have, but didn't. And that, somehow, was worse. Aboard Nemesis, Aria watched the data streams of disabled fleets drifting helplessly through Terran space. She said nothing for a long moment. Then, softly, almost to herself, "Mercy isn't the absence of power. It's the control of it." Erebus replied. "Your restraint terrifies them." "Good," she said. "They need to remember that mercy is still an option." She turned away from the stars, cloak trailing behind her, as she headed for the war room. "Erebus," she said, "open a channel to the council. It's time they understand what the next vote means. Acknowledged, Commander. Transmission ready? Aria faced the glowing hollow camera, eyes steady, voice unflinching. This is Commander Aria Vale of the human fleet. You have 1 solar day to gather your leaders. The next vote begins soon. The screen faded to black. Outside, Nemesis turned slowly toward the galactic core, like a predator walking through a forest it once ruled. And the galaxy, for the first time in living memory, held its breath. The Federation's Grand Armada drifted helplessly in the dark. Thousands of ships, cruisers, dreadnoughts, carriers, hung frozen in Terran space. Their reactors were silent. Their weapons dead. Their communication lines jammed with a single, recurring message pulsing across every frequency. Trespass acknowledged. Judgment pending. From the bridge of HSS Nemesis, Commander Aria Vale watched the holographic projection of the immobilized fleets. The stars shimmered faintly against the reflection of her face, calm, expressionless, and colder than the void itself. Status, she ordered. Erebus, the ship's AI, answered in its toneless baritone. 312 vessels disabled. 0 fatalities. Suggest escalation threshold adjustment for psychological impact. Aria gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. No. Let them wonder how they're still alive. Let them imagine the limits of our mercy. She turned toward her officers. Open visual channels to all Federation flagships. Moments later, dozens of faces appeared. Different species, different colors, all wearing the same expression, terror. You violated Terran sovereignty, Aria began. And yet you live. That is your first gift. You will receive no second. Admiral Kethla, feathers trembling, managed to speak. Commander Vale, this is an act of war. Aria's gaze did not waver. War? She repeated. You think we seek war? You taught us what war is, Admiral. You enslaved our children, erased our cities, stripped our oceans clean for your resource quotas. No, what we offer now is balance. Behind her, Nemesis's central reactor pulsed, a deep, throbbing hum that resonated through the deck plates. The alien admirals heard it too. The sound wasn't mechanical. It was alive. Vakhtar's scaled visage appeared next. His voice oozed venom. You speak of balance, human, but all I see is arrogance. You. He stopped. His image flickered as his flagship's power cut out. The hologram died mid-sentence. Erebus, Aria said quietly. Demonstration mode. Tier 1. The AI responded. Confirmed. Outside, the stars shifted. From Nemesis's belly, shimmering lines of light expanded outward, forming massive lattice patterns across the void. They were not weapons, not in the conventional sense, but gravitational shears, folding space like silk. Within seconds, the disabled Federation fleet began to move. Not by engines, but by the will of Nemesis. Their ships were rearranged, entire armadas dragged silently into formation, their hulls gleaming under Terran floodlight arrays. To the alien captains, it felt as though invisible hands were positioning them into a single, massive ring. Then, in the center of that ring, Nemesis emerged, black, colossal, dwarfing every dreadnought in sight. Its armor shimmered with faint blue veins of energy. Symbols, ancient Terran runes and Latin inscriptions, etched across its hull. And above its bridge, one message glowed in red. Humanity endures. Inside the council chamber, chaos erupted. Vakhtar's fleet isn't responding. Communications black out across the outer sectors. They're forming some kind of ritual circle around the Terran ship. The Chancellor's voice cut through the noise. Enough speculation. Bring up the visual feed. The central holodisplay flickered to life. The entire chamber fell silent. There it was. Nemesis. A ship so massive, it blotted out the stars. By the core, whispered one delegate. That's impossible. It was no mere battleship. The Nemesis was a floating ecosystem, a city of war, a relic and a warning all in one. Its size dwarfed anything the Federation had ever built. And it wasn't just size. It was elegance. Every curve, every plate, every glowing line screamed of precision and purpose. And then, Aria's voice filled the chamber once more. 3 centuries ago, you used chains. We used silence. You burned our skies. We harvest your fear. You called us monsters. You were right. The council trembled. Back aboard Nemesis, Erebus's sensor logs lit up. Chancellor's emergency meeting detected. 72% of council members in attendance. Aria nodded. Patch me in. A dozen holographic figures appeared before her. Each delegate looked as though they'd seen death itself. Commander Vale. Bakhtar growled, his composure cracking. What do you want from us? Aria tilted her head slightly. You remember your vote, Chancellor? His eyes narrowed. She cut him off. Every species voted. Every species chose slavery for my kind. Now you will vote again. But this time, the vote is not for power. It is for survival. A silence deeper than space itself filled the chamber. She continued, voice even, deliberate. Those who confess their crimes will be spared. Those who deny them will be erased from existence. Your fleets have seen what Nemesis can do without firing a single shot. Imagine what happens when we do. Bakhtar spat. You're bluffing. Aria's gaze turned to Erebus. Demonstration mode. Tier 2. The AI complied. Confirmed. The demonstration began. A single pulse of light erupted from Nemesis's hull, a beam of white so bright it cut through the darkness of space like dawn breaking over night. It touched one ship on the outer edge of the alien formation. No explosion. No fire. No debris. The ship simply disintegrated, its atoms reduced to motes of stardust, scattered harmlessly into the void. Silence followed. We call it the Mercy Lance, Aria said softly. It leaves no pain, no screams, no wreckage. Just absence. No one spoke. Even Bakhtar had nothing left to say. Aria stepped closer to the holographic table, her eyes cold and sharp. That was one ship. You command over 300. Imagine them all. After she ended the transmission, the bridge remained silent for several seconds. Then Erebus said, Council response detected. Multiple factions requesting negotiation channels. Several others retreating from Terran borders. Aria exhaled, slow and steady. Good. Fear will do what diplomacy never could. Her lieutenant, Lieutenant Jarachin, spoke quietly. Commander, do we intend to destroy them all? Aria's expression softened, just slightly. No, Lieutenant. We intend to make sure they never try again. She turned toward the viewport where alien ships drifted in obedient silence, now orbiting Nemesis like fearful satellites. Prepare for Phase 2, she said. It's time to see who remembers their sins, and who lies to their graves. And somewhere, deep within the ship's core, Nemesis pulsed again, alive, aware, and waiting. The Council reconvened in less than 8 hours, an emergency convocation pulled together by fear and the thin reed of pride. The chamber's usual pomp had been stripped away. Delegates arrived pale, trembling with indignity or fury, clutching relics of office like talismans. Screens along the walls still looped the footage of Nemesis and the Mercy Lance. The vote tape between the years glowed like an accusation. Bakhtar took the podium first, and for the first few minutes he was the chancellor they all knew: venom, protocol, bravado. He spoke of sovereignty, of retaliation, of the necessity of stamping out a nascent Terran threat before it could swallow the Federation whole. His words were weapons meant to sharpen old loyalties. But the camera on the council table transmitted across every fleet, across the ring of human-controlled void where Nemesis waited, and Aria's face settled onto the main feed like a sentence. She watched them, not with triumph, but with the measured gaze of someone setting a clock. You have 1 hour to submit your vote, she said. Her voice carried with an evenness that found every delegate's ears. Admit your part in the vote of subjugation. Confess names, dates, and the officials who carried your hand. Anyone who refuses, hides, or lies will forfeit their continued existence. Silence rippled. Then, as if released, panic stampeded into the chamber. Old alliances strained, whispers spread, accusations flew. Admiral Kethla, already humbled, stood and offered a plea. Commander Vale, what about the species that followed orders without full knowledge? Some were coerced, others lied to by emissaries. Her avian breast heaved. We ask for mercy. Aria's reply was a scalpel. We will judge intent. We will differentiate the coerced from the conspirator. But you must tell the truth. Mercy is conditional. It is not a blind pardon. The first votes came in fast, small polities with little to hide, those that had kept no records, that had acted on instinct. They confessed and provided names. The human monitors verified timelines against Nemesis's archives. Those who confessed were issued a temporary status, protected pending rehabilitation. Their fleets were returned, shorn of offensive capability, and required to anchor near Terran way stations under human oversight. Then the larger players began to squirm. The Vrax Dominion's envoys denounced the vote as farce. Vaktar himself called for a motion to declare Nemesis a rogue entity and authorize preemptive strikes. The motion nearly passed, until a junior Vrax minister rose and spoke with a voice that cracked like old paint. You voted to enslave them, the minister said. I cast my vote then. I cannot live with what I did. I will make amends. He named the committee members, the contracts, the shipments. His confession detonated across the chamber. Others followed, sobbing, bargaining, naming collaborators and other races. Friends accused friends. Spines bent under the weight of shame. Not everyone confessed. Some stalls laced their responses with legalisms. No record found, procedural vote, clerk sealed, these are fabrications. Where documents existed, Nemesis's analysts produced corroborations, transport manifests, encrypted orders, slave housing schematics, data that matched the original archives. Where records had truly been purged, witness lists and surviving survivors, those human records that had been preserved clandestinely, filled the gaps. One by one, the council's old pillars cracked. Wealthy houses found their holdings frozen. Admiralties lost command. Embassies were shuttered and placed under tutelage. The Terran Accord teams moved with cold efficiency. Nemesis's lawyers and historians delivered verdicts with forensic exactness. Vaktar's fury turned to manic calculation. He realized the votes were shifting away from him. His allies were betraying him in quiet corridors, trading survival for a sliver of life. He summoned his most trusted captains for a private vote of no confidence in the council, an attempt to seize control of the convocation and declare open war. He thought that by doing so he could force the council's hand and break Nemesis quickly. He miscounted. A coup in the Vrax fleet, engineered by one of his suspected confidants, who had already confessed to Terran overseers in exchange for protection, collapsed before it began. The captain turned his guns inward and broadcast Vaktar's private logs to every station, charts of human labor camps, records of barter for living organs, transcripts of his speeches boasting about a future made comfortable on Earth's blood. The leaks were surgical. Vaktar's image, once regal, flickered between arrogant and desperate on the gallery screens. In the lower galleries, delegates muttered. Betrayal chewed at the last vestiges of loyalty. A faction that had once openly allied with him, traitors who profited most from crowd labor, declared themselves neutral and handed their fleet keys to the Terran stewards. Vaktar, enraged and isolated, slammed his claws against the dais. He lunged for the emergency seal that would have released defense codes and ignited his hidden armadas. Before he could complete the gesture, a figure moved through the council ranks, a slim, aged representative from a minor aquatic polity, her scales clouded with age. She had been close to Vaktar once his ally with shared spoils. Now she walked up to the podium and set a small data slate down on the table. Chancellor, she said, voice soft and final, you made us monsters. I will not die for you. She pressed the slate. The transmission released into the public feed. It showed Vakhtar's private channels, his offers of bribes, and a message he'd sent to a cartel leader promising dominion if the council's vote stood. The footage concluded with Vakhtar's signature phrase, "Order through fear is order kept." The chamber erupted. For the first time in centuries, Vakhtar tasted the pure, private fear of a dying reputation. His allies abandoned him outright. Guards who'd once stood at his side turned their backs. He reached for the seal again, but a contingent of neutral forces, those who had confessed and been spared, moved in as human custodians arrived. Vakhtar's security detail faltered in the face of a coalition that no longer feared him. A single blade flashed in the dim. In the scuffle that followed, Vakhtar fell, wounded gravely by his own guard in the confusion, and bled out as the chamber watched. Some said it was poetic, others called it an injustice. Aria did not celebrate. When the last vote was tallied, the results were messy and precise. 2/3 of the Federation confessed in whole, or in part. They were parceled into categories: rehabilitated, monitored, restricted. One fateful 10th refused, denied, obfuscated, or incensed, and were sentenced by unanimous decree to be removed from existence if they maintained their course. Their fleets remained immobilized, sent to orbit neutral way stations, suspended between life and erasure. Aria's message to the council was simple and coldly humane. "You spoke the word mercy freely when you enslaved us," she said. "Today, you are offered mercy with conditions. Learn its price." She paused, and for a breath the whole chamber felt the weight of centuries. "We will teach you restraint. We will root out your enablers. And we will watch. The choice to live will be one you must earn again, day by day." Outside, Nemesis allowed a sliver of humanity's fleets to return to their systems under strict oversight. Education centers, Terran academies, arrived to train former enslavers in the ethics of sovereignty. Reparations began with the slow, methodical work of returning knowledge, redistributing resources, and building safeguards so history could not be so easily rewritten. As council members filed out, some wept, others spat, many simply stared at the floor. The galaxy's structure had been broken and remade in a matter of hours. New treaties were on the horizon, old hierarchies lay in rubble. Aria watched the afterimages of the council feed fade from Nemesis's displays. For a moment she allowed herself a private, slight slump in posture, the smallest sign of fatigue. Then she straightened. "Begin oversight rotations," she ordered. "Rehabilitation teams deployed to identified sectors. And archive everything. History must stay recorded." Erebus replied. "Acknowledged. Probability of recurrence if oversight lapses, 30%. Aria's lips were a thin line. "Then ensure oversight never lapses." She turned from the hollow and walked past the bridge, toward the lower decks where the human survivors and the newly liberated lived and worked. There would be debates, insurgencies, and the inevitable grudges that survive the sharpest of peace accords. She knew power could corrode the purest intent. As she descended, she thought of the children born in chains and the names erased from textbooks. She thought of the mercy they'd offered, stern, conditional, and immutable. Outside the observation window, Nemesis sailed through a dark lattice of human-guarded relays, an enormous black ship carrying the fragile promise of a new order. And somewhere, far from the shattered council, a minor species elder whispered as she watched the Terran fleet recede, half reverent, half afraid. "We survived," she said. "Because they let us." The galaxy learned that mercy could be crueler than violence, and in that cruelty, perhaps, there was a chance for something like justice. The first dawn of the Reconstruction era didn't begin with sunlight. It began with transmission. Across every inhabited world, from the crystal domes of Aiken Prime to the hollowed-out moons of Vrax space, screens flickered alive with the crest of the Terran Union. No anthem played, no propaganda blared. Just one line of text, white on black. "You voted to enslave us. We voted to survive. Now we will rebuild, together or not at all." Those who'd lived long enough to remember the vote of subjugation felt the line like a blade pressed against the soul. The humans hadn't demanded conquest. They demanded accountability. On the capital station of the new Galactic Assembly, a structure built in neutral orbit, not on any alien world, 10,000 species gathered under the banners of truce. It was a council unlike any other, no ornate thrones, no royal crests, no golden robes. Every seat was the same shape, the same metal, the same height. Humans had insisted on that. Commander Aria Vale stood before the hall once again, but this time not as an avenger. She stood as what humanity had become, a force that balanced justice with something far rarer in the galaxy, restraint. Her armor was gone. She wore gray diplomat's robes, simple, functional. But her eyes, the cold steel blue that had haunted the council chamber during the reclamation, still carried the promise of consequence. Today, she began, her voice broadcast across 1,000 sectors, marks the end of reckoning, and the beginning of memory. Behind her, a massive holographic map of the galaxy spun slowly. Planets glowed in 3 colors. Blue, those that confessed and cooperated. Yellow, those under Terran rehabilitation. Red, those that resisted and vanished from all charts. The age of kings and councils is over, she said. No species will vote on the enslavement of another again. No alliance will hide atrocity under the veil of bureaucracy. From this day forward, the Union Charter stands. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The Union Charter was the new law humanity had drafted, 10 articles that rewrote interstellar order. Aria gestured, and the first article appeared behind her. Article 1. No life shall serve unwillingly under another sentient will. Simple words. But for those who had built empires on labor and fear, they were a death sentence. From the back of the hall, Admiral Kethla, the avian commander who once enslaved human refugees, then later confessed, rose to speak. I will testify, she said. My fleets carried humans in chains. Now they carry Terran teachers. My world has seen more peace in 3 months of oversight than in 3 centuries of dominance. I thank you. Aria inclined her head slightly. The gesture was not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. Then your people understand the cost of survival, she said. Outside the political chambers, the galaxy's military balance had shifted beyond recognition. The Vrax fleets, once the terror of the outer systems, now drifted under Nemesis's black banners. Their weapon cores had been sealed, their commanders placed under human supervision. Nemesis itself, still orbiting the Council's old homeworld, had become a symbol. Some called it the Reaper in Waiting. Others, the Guardian. It was both. Erebus, its AI core, now functioned as the enforcement arbiter for the Charter. Entire armadas responded to its directives before they could even question them. Some protested that it made humanity too powerful. Others whispered that it made the galaxy safe for the first time in history. When the Ghost fleets, the 10th that had refused to confess, tried to flee beyond map space, Nemesis found them. Every ship. Every world. The encounters lasted seconds. Transmission logs showed only one signal before the fleets were erased. Mercy denied. And then silence. The message was never explained publicly. But across the stars, the silence that followed was enough. In the years that followed, the galaxy changed in ways no one expected. Planets once draped in chains began producing schools, universities, research stations, all under human mentorship. Alien children studied human history not as a curse, but as a warning. Terran engineers helped rebuild the ruined cities of Aurelian Prime, where once 1 billion humans had labored in mines. The last surviving miners, old, frail, haunted, became teachers. Their words echoed through new generations. Never again means nothing if we forget why it mattered. Aria Vale became a reluctant icon. Her name was whispered in reverence and fear. Some called her the Iron Saint, others the Angel of Retribution. But she rejected both. When asked in an interview what humanity's goal truly was, she answered simply, to make sure no one ever has to be what we became to survive. Decades passed. The galaxy stabilized under Terran guidance. And then one quiet morning, Nemesis set course for Sol. It had been nearly 200 years since a Terran flagship returned home. The blue marble of Earth shimmered on the main display, alive, green, healed. Aria, now older and slower, stood on the observation deck. Her officers gathered behind her, veterans of a war that had been more moral than physical. "Home," whispered Lieutenant Carver. "Never thought I'd see it again." Aria smiled faintly. "You didn't have to. It never left us." She watched as Nemesis lowered through the stratosphere, breaking cloud layers that had once burned with war. On the ground, billions watched the dark silhouette of the ship appear above the ocean. It wasn't a weapon now. It was a promise fulfilled. The broadcast went galaxy-wide. "This is Commander Aria Vale of the Terran Union," her voice declared. "We have come home, not as conquerors, but as custodians. We remember what you did to us. And we forgive what you have become." The words weren't for Earth. They were for the galaxy. Centuries later, historians would still speak of the vote, the day every species decided Earth's fate. And the day Earth decided everyone else's. But the real legacy wasn't written in treaties or fleets. It was written in silence, the kind that followed when an empire realized it could no longer act without consequence. In academies across the stars, students would read from the final page of the Terran Charter, signed by every major race. "Strength without empathy is extinction delayed. Mercy without memory is cruelty reborn." And beneath that, in smaller print, "Signed, in the name of humanity." In her final years, Aria retired to a small settlement on Mars. The red horizon stretched endlessly outside her dome, and she found peace in the silence. She refused statues, refused titles, refused monuments. When a young envoy from the Galactic Assembly visited her, asking how she wished to be remembered, she simply said, "Remember the ones who didn't survive. Remember that we were human before we were powerful. And if one day you fear us again, good. It means you still remember what we are capable of." When she passed, Nemesis itself went dark for one full day across the network, a galaxy-wide moment of silence. In the black between stars, a single transmission played once, on every known frequency. "We forgive. But we never forge." The galaxy that rose from the ashes of subjugation wasn't peaceful, but it was aware. Every race now kept memorials to the enslaved humans, their own version of penance. And every year, on the anniversary of the first vote, the stars dimmed for 1 hour in synchronized observance. No ships moved. No broadcasts played. Just silence. It was called the Hour of Chains, a tradition kept not out of fear, but remembrance. Because the galaxy had learned the oldest, simplest truth of all. Mercy is not weakness. Humanity is not helpless. And the past never stays buried if you survive to speak it. Far beyond the rim, in deep space, an unmanned Terran probe drifted through the dark, its message repeating into eternity. "This is Earth. We were enslaved once. Now we are free. If you find this signal, remember. We do not conquer. We endure." The stars listened. And somewhere, something ancient and unseen whispered back. "Understood." The end. Loudspeaker The Void Narratives Outro. At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, raw, defiant, and unforgettable. If you believe mercy can be mightier than vengeance, subscribe to The Void Narratives for more HFY tales that remind the stars who we really are.